Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this week's Screenside Chat with CWD. And we're kind of settling into our sunny Sunday afternoon quarantine mode here. And I'm very honored to be joined today by Cherise Shockley, who's the founder of DSMA, Women of Color Diabetes, and she's the Diatribe Community Manager. And today we're going to be talking about the diabetes online community, inclusion, and strategies for getting more stories from the community. So, Cherise, now it's time to introduce yourself, and whenever you're ready, you can get your slides up there, and I'll be hanging out here waiting for you to be ready to chat.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Cherise Shockley, and I was actually diagnosed with latent autoimmune diabetes back in 2004. I want to make sure you can you see my slides? Oh, and of course my dog barks. Sorry about
that. That's okay. This is how it happens. Let's you should be able to change your slides, Cherise. Let me know if you have any trouble doing that.
Okay, so I think my slides are moving faster. I am so sorry about this.
That's okay. We are pinch hitting for pancreases. We can also wing it on technology. You're doing great.
Okay, perfect. We're there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my name is Cherise Shockley. I was diagnosed with latent autoimmune diabetes in adults back in 2004. And I just want to say thank you before we get started to the entire CWD team for giving me this opportunity to share my perspective on diversity and inclusion and how we can get a little bit of both and actually a little bit of all of it and more of all of it inside of our current landscape. So I actually stumbled across the diabetes online community back in 2008. It's when I became insulin dependent, and I was looking for information about an insulin pump, and I stumbled across 2Diabetes, which was ran by Manny Hernandez, who actually is a Latin. Oh gosh, I'm nervous. Hold on, let me slow down. He's actually has diabetes. He has latent autoimmune as well. And what drew me to him was the conversation and the different opinions and cultures that was embedded or inside of that community. And then in 2010, I attended one of my first diabetes summits, and it was a Roche Diabetes Summit. And it's actually funny because, you know, when you are actually online, you really don't realize how many people is participating online. And when you're in a small room, you realize, and you walk in this room and you realize, okay, wait a minute, where are all the Black people? So my first summit, I walked in the room and I kind of looked around and I didn't say anything. I kind of played it cool. And inside of my head, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like I am the only Black person here. So after the summit, after the first day of the summit, that night, I called my husband and I told him, I was like, babe, I'm the only Black person here. So since 2010, I have been on a mission to make sure there were more people of color in the room, whether it's Black, Hispanic, Native American, whatever, anyone besides the usual 20 Caucasian people that are in the room. So, and then over the course of the years, the participants started to pick up where there was at least 4 or 5 people of color attending certain events. So this quote right here really speaks volumes to what we see right now in the community. I think a couple of weeks ago, I participated in a Zoom call that Kylene had, and one of the girls was telling her story, and what she was saying is that she felt like the community, the diabetes online community as is, was very whitewashed, and how she couldn't find her place until she stumbled across Kylene's Instagram page. So the importance of more stories is not just about, you know, the color of our skin. It's about having more stories because we all come from different backgrounds, different walks of life. We have different beliefs. Those stories right there is the importance of the diabetes online community. And those stories, in my opinion, have been missing since I began and started participating in the community. So why do we need diverse stories in the community? So back in December, I participated or spoke at the International Diabetes Federation Congress. And I went online, and when I do talks, I usually bring the voice of the community with me, because I don't like to just share my opinions, because it's not about me. To me, as a person who's representing the community, it's important to bring the voices with me. So here are a few replies from the community on why we need diverse voices. And if they have an @ sign, that is their Twitter handle, and it may be their Instagram handle too. So if you want to follow these amazing people, I definitely encourage you to do so. I have learned a lot from them. Now, here's one thing. They all might not have type 1 diabetes. Some of them may have type 2 diabetes. So I need to throw that out there. So one of the things that is important to know, diabetes, no one asks to get it. Diabetes doesn't discriminate. Doesn't matter what color we are, no matter where we live, how old we are. If we're going to get it, we're going to get it, whether it's type 1 or type 2. But to me, the community is missing so many voices. And when we elevate the same people over and over again, there's people that get discouraged and they walk away. They'll share their story, no one's paying attention, and they'll stop. And we can't afford that as a community, especially when we think about people of color, because we need a place for everyone to feel comfortable with sharing their story. It's not just about the Caucasian people, the Caucasian young people. It's also about the Black people. It's about the Hispanic people. It's about everyone living with diabetes. And right now, like I said earlier, we're not seeing stories from everyone living with diabetes. And when I say everyone, I don't mean we're going to go find the 35 million people and get them online, but those that are online who are sharing, it's important that we amplify those voices to encourage more diversity and inclusion in the community. And then once again, here are some more replies from people with inside the community as well. Some of these comments, like I said, came from Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So I'll just give you a quick second to look over that. But while you're looking over the slides, if you have any questions at all, please make sure you leave them in the, I guess it's a message box area where you have the opportunity to do so, because like I said, I don't have all the answers. This is just my experience, and I know that it's 2020 and I should not participate in a summit where there's people with diabetes and still be one of 5 people of color when there's 50 white people in the room. So that's something that we need to change. And I want to kind of piggyback off of something or talk about something that happened a couple of years ago. I went to a pharmaceutical summit, and they were trying to get advice about their products. And as I'm sitting in this room, I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go again. 2018, 2019, here we go again. Why am I the only Black person in the room? Why is there only 3 Latina people in the room? Why isn't there enough representation? So once again, I raise my hand and I ask, this does not, and I say this does not represent the diabetes online community, and we need more representation. The cool thing about speaking up, and sometimes I get very uncomfortable because it's like they're gonna think, okay, oh my gosh, here she goes again. She's on her soapbox. But the cool thing about me getting on the soapbox that time is the following year, or maybe 8 months that the company had the summit, a lot of people spoke up. A lot of white people spoke up because we need allies and said, look, we need more diversity. We need to include more people of color in the summit. And a lot of them, they either didn't come back or said they wasn't going to go back until it was more diversity. And when we went back to that summit, there were more people of color represented inside the room. So even if it's uncomfortable, speak up. So it's something about, and even for me, when I find out that I'm going somewhere and I could be the only person of color, it's very, very uncomfortable at times. So sometimes I have to step outside of my box and think about my why and the reason why I do things and I represent the community in ways. One is because there needs to be people at the table. But secondly, there needs to be more people of color at the table. So if you have someone or you don't have a friend who doesn't look like you, it's really easy. I know it sounds hard, but I promise you, it's simple to reach out and say, hey, on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, hey, I really love your work. Is there any way I can share it? Or is there any way we can collaborate on something? Because unless you do it, unless you step outside of your box to help someone, then we're going to still be underrepresented in the community. So my ask of you is to get uncomfortable, follow that person of color that you've been watching for a few months and you think they're cool and you just haven't did it, or hey, participate in the Women of Color Diabetes Challenge. I mean, that's even stepping outside the box. So we'll talk about that later, but I just wanted to bring that up. So this quote right here speaks volumes. As an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his my blood sugar's low, concerns to broader concerns of all humanity. So with this, to me, it says that, and I'm going to take it to the diabetes community, we are not showing the entire community, we're not showing the community the online space if we just keep showing Caucasian people, if Caucasian people continue to only be the people that have the seat at the table, if Caucasian people are only people that being represented at JDRF conferences, if Caucasian people are only ones that's being presented in Dexcom ads, unless you're a football player or you're a well-known person, we have to get outside of that box, stop going to these well-known people all the time, and find people who are sharing their story, who wants to share their story with the world. To me, that's more important than getting the superstars. So hopefully we can bring the community together and connect in more ways. So here, there are a lot of people of color that are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I just happened to put this slide together. If you follow certain hashtags like WOC diabetes, hashtag POC diabetes, and if you follow any of these people on this screen, you will be able to find so many more people of color. And I highly recommend following all of these beautiful people if you do not follow them now. So earlier I showed you a picture of summits back from 2010, 2011, and 2012. Last year, we actually had, DSMA had a meetup during AADE. And to me, this shows how diverse our community really is. I actually was in a room with more people of color in one setting than I have been with diabetes in quite some time. So I kind of just wanted to show you that if you can't connect online, you can connect offline. You can create spaces for people. But on the flip side of that is that as people of color, we also have to make sure that we're inclusive as well, so people come in and they can get to know us, know our community and our culture. And this quote is from Kerri, and to me, it speaks volumes of the importance of storytelling. If you're listening and you want to start an Instagram page, you want to start a YouTube account, if you want to start a Twitter account, you want to start a Twitter chat, go for it, make it happen. Reach out to us and let us know that you're going to make it happen so I can make sure that I'm there to support you, because I love supporting people and I love to connect people. So I think that for me, to wrap things up really quickly, is that we don't want people to feel like they're not represented. When they find this online community, this space that so many of us has called our second home, where we've met our best friends, where we met our second family, to feel like they're not included, and they're not included because of the color of their skin. So my ask is, reach out, make someone feel comfortable. And if you don't feel comfortable, send them a direct message and say, you know what, I know this may be awkward, but I want to support you. I mean, it's just simple as making someone feel comfortable, because it goes a long way. I've never been in a position in the online community or at summits where people have not made me feel comfortable because of the color of my skin. But I am one person, and that's not everybody's story. So I'm hoping that this has not happened to anyone, but we cannot afford to lose people of color, and we cannot afford not to have their voices represented, because their voice matters, their stories matter, just like our Caucasian peers. And also, if you're out there listening, there is a challenge going on for women of color. It was created by women of color. However, we need allies. We need your support. We need to let people know that we exist. There could be women of color out there that have no clue that this account exists. So I ask you, whether, like I said, Twitter, Facebook, on your social platform, if you could share this with your people, your communities, that would be awesome. And thank you so much.
All right.
And
I'm back, Cherise. And because I can't control myself from asking this question, do you need a juice box or anything? Because you sound super good, but I just want to make sure when you said your blood sugar was low that you don't actually need to grab a snack. I can't help but mom everybody.
yes, I'm good. And do I need to stop
Okay.
sharing my screen? Stop sharing screen. Okay.
Cool. So you said you were all set?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, sorry. I always like to check. But so I was really glad that you ran through all of that stuff, and especially putting accounts on the screen that show accounts that people can follow and places where people can find voices that are more diverse and represent people of color. But you and I, when we talked about this on Friday and kind of ran through our test webinar, we had it was almost like I wish that we had recorded that webinar, because the flow of what we were talking about was really good. So I took some notes while we were talking, and I just wanted to kind of run through some questions, because there's some points that I wanted to make sure we touched on, and a lot of it is about embracing the awkwardness of some of these conversations. So the first thing I wanted to ask was, when we're developing relationships, and I mean, you and I are professional colleagues, but we're also friends, and I feel like you're a really important voice in my head, and you help guide a lot of the decisions that I've made, both professionally and personally, and that's been so awesome. And so, like, how do we, the royal we, develop relationships outside of our comfort zones? Like, how do people find and unite with people that aren't exactly like them?
Whew.
No pressure.
So that's a tough. Yeah, I was saying. So that is a tough question. And so I'm gonna go back to one of the things that we kind of talked about. So my husband, he's white, and he's from a very small town in Missouri. And when I say like 600 people, 600 people. So when I met him, I was like, okay, I know that you don't care that I'm black, but like, am I going to be okay? He was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be okay. And I think for me, it took me stepping outside of what the world and even my parents or grandparents or whoever else has told me in the past, to open up my heart and my eyes so I can embrace it and learn from what I see. I didn't want to go in there assuming that, or this town assuming that all, white people hate black people. And so when I went there, Kerri, let me tell you something. It was amazing. It was amazing. And if I went in there thinking that, I'm not going to be accepted because of the color of my skin, it would have went south. So I think sometimes you have to get uncomfortable in order to become comfortable. And over my lifetime, I've been, like I said, in positions where, I am the only black person, or my husband's the only white person. But I think that it just, what's in here, your intentions and your why, when you approach that person, it would be clear. Say, you know what, I'm nervous. I've never done this before, but hey, what I want to help. I want to be there. I want to get to know you. How can I get to know you? I mean, Kerri, I've had people reach out to me and ask me in the diabetes community questions about, you know, being Black in America or hair care products that I use. So I think that you have to be uncomfortable to get comfortable. And it's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a white person getting comfortable with a person of color. It's about a person of color feeling comfortable with saying, hey, Kerri, I love what you're doing at CWD. How can I be a part of this?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what the assumption is, the diabetes community isn't what it used to be. The online space used to be very small, and so small that Scott Johnson used to be able to comment on everybody's blog, I mean, whatever. And it's like that. So we can't see everything like we used to. So sometimes it's up to us as well to say, hey, I see you have this screenshot chat going on.
Mm-hmm.
How can I be a part of it? You know, I'm an expert in exercise, or I'm an expert in cooking, because until we come together as a community, it's going to continue to be like this because we're not comfortable, and we have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable.
So let me ask you kind of a question that builds off of that. So you're saying you have to know your why, and that hopefully your why will be apparent. So what about situations where outreach might be misconstrued? Or just use me as a hypothetical. If I reach out to someone of color and they read something different in my words than I intend, like what happens when the awkwardness stays a little awkward? What advice would you have for somebody who's done some outreach and maybe it didn't go well?
So for me, what I usually do in uncomfortable situations, I kind of get a vibe for the person. And if I feel comfortable, I'll say, hey, can I call you? Or can we do a Skype call? Or can we do a Zoom? Because I think I might have messed this up.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to make sure that I didn't mess it up and get some tips on how to make it better if I did mess it up. Or what
Gotcha.
could I do?
So go for clarity right away.
Go for clarity right away, because sometimes you don't know until it's crickets and you're like, oh shoot, like what did I say? Or, you know, did I offend anybody? Like what happened? So no, totally. If you're cool, even if you're not cool with that person, I haven't met anyone in the community that hasn't been okay with a Skype call or a phone call. So if they're not okay with it, wait until they are okay with it and then go from there. And if not, the thing I hate about emails and text messages and direct messages is that sometimes things come across badly. So I would just say, if you can, try to get that person on a phone call. Even on a text message, you can be have a little bit more emotion toward that than you can just a direct message.
Got it. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of embracing the awkward. So if things seem awkward, to say very quickly, oh, this is awkward, and just to kind of get it out there. And that helps to make conversation flow a little better. So kind of talking about the community, and as it's grown, the word influencer is being used, and it wasn't being used when you and I first met, and the online community felt smaller and more intimate. Now it's much broader, and there are words like influencer. And we had talked earlier about the definition of influencer and kind of the concept of redefining what being an influencer is. So from your perspective, either from your wish list of, oh gosh, I wish an influencer was this, or what we can aspire to, what does it mean to influence, and how can people who are influencers use their powers for good?
Woo! So
we like to keep the questions small and easy to answer.
Look, if my hair was still long or curly, I'm like, ah! Okay. So I have 3 buckets.
Okay.
So there's the influencer buckets, there is the advocates, and there are communicators, right? And then you also have those people who are trying to find their footing, and they just started their Instagram page, they just started their Twitter account, and they've been watching the influencers and they've been watching advocates online for a very long time, and now they want to get started, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think that I personally do not consider myself an influencer. Um, and that is because I see influencers differently because I worked in marketing for a very long time. I've worked in this space professionally for a while. So what we see as an influencers and what the world, so like your insulin pump companies, your pharma companies, what they see as influencers as somebody who either one is a representative of the community who can push a product for me, or you have somebody who is a communicator that will share, information about the meeting to help somebody get, the $50 discount savings card. Or you have someone who's that micro influencer, like I said, who's trying to come up in the world. How we all can use our voice to amplify others, people of color, or people just in general, is to make sure we share. Make sure you like. Make sure you use repost. Make sure you use retweet. But there's a caveat.
Okay.
Make sure that you read that person's Twitter account, that you look at that person's Instagram feed to make sure that that person aligns with the things that you believe in, because sometimes what you see and then what you find out months later, you're like, oh shoot, I may have just endorsed somebody or I just supported someone who not has different beliefs, because it's good. I have friends that don't believe in the same things that I do, because I believe in God, and I have some friends who are atheists and I'm okay with that. However, there's some things that you have to watch out for, whether it's racial remarks or, type 1, type 2 hatred. So you have to make sure you pay attention to who you choose to associate with and who you choose to follow. But once you do, and you share, because these influencers, these communicators, these advocates wouldn't have this attention if it wasn't for people supporting them and believing in them. DSMA, back in the day, would not be here where it is today without the support of the diabetes online community. My voice would not be where it is without the people in the diabetes community. The opportunities that I have would not be, because it's not me. It's because of, yes, the good that I do for the community, but also because of the amazing relationships and friendships, both professionally and personally, that I've been able to develop over the course of a few years. And I'm very authentic. So what you see is what you get. I don't hold my tongue. So luckily, I haven't offended anybody. And those relationships just continue to grow and evolve, and I keep getting more. So I think for me, that's probably what it is. Follow somebody, share, but before you do so, make sure you watch them and you follow them before you start resharing, because there may be something that may pop up. And like I tell my friends, I've told you this too, Kerri, before. If you see me say something or do something that's not in my character, you got permission to call me out. Don't call me out online though, because that's happened. And I had to go back and check somebody for that because their information was wrong. But you do not check anybody and call them out online. That's what the phone is for. That's what direct message is for, and that's what text message is for.
And that seems like a good message in terms of like being tactful and courteous and not causing more strife. And just really quickly, for those people who aren't aware of what DSMA is, could you just give a quick synopsis, because it's so ingrained in the way that you and I talk and the way that people in the community communicate. But for someone who's a DSMA novice, can you do a quick walkthrough? Because that enterprise has connected so many different kinds of people, both type 1 and type 2, and just worth a big shout out. So hook us up.
So DSMA, it stands for Diabetes Social Media Advocacy. It's for anybody that is impacted with diabetes. It's not type specific, whether you're a doctor, whatever. This is the place to be. Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitter. The hashtag is DSMA. If you follow that hashtag or search it, you'll find everybody that participates. We are in the process of having some chats on Twitter, and also kind of incorporating more Zoom calls for that face-to-face time. So that's what DSMA is. You can feel free to join us anytime. The door is always open.
And DSMA stands for?
Diabetes Social Media Advocacy.
It's so awesome.
Thank
and you know
you.
what, Cherise? We have more questions that you and I had talked about, but we have a couple that have come in from people who are watching online. I want to make sure we get to those. So do you mind if I pop over to those real quick?
I know. I want to say hi to everybody. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to my presentation. And it means the world to me because I was very nervous because, you know, this is a topic that for many years has kind of, okay, I'm not going to cry. Okay.
As long as you're not crying because you're low.
Not crying because I'm low. That is very important to me for many reasons, not because I'm a Black woman, but because we just need those voices. And it's funny because up until this year, I didn't think anybody was listening. And then we went to a summit, an Essentia summit, and Joe, who is the director of communications, I probably got his title wrong, at Essentia, and he called me and he was like, "Hey, Cherise, I hate to bother you, but I'm looking for, you know, a Black woman with type 2 to be in this commercial that we're doing for World Diabetes Day." He said, "I would ask you." He said, "But I don't want to do that. No offense." And I was like, "No, I appreciate you because I am not the only Black person. And I appreciate you reaching out to me, asking me to help you find someone else." And I was able to deliver. I was able to find someone for him, for his commercial that wasn't someone that everybody sees all the time. And to me, that was a wake-up call that said, you may have been talking like this for 10 years, but the world and the people with diabetes are finally listening. So I just wanted to say, just thank you so much for your support. I appreciate each and every one of you.
Well, let's get to some of these messages of support. So Felissa has sent in more of a comment than a question. I'm just going to read what Felissa has written. So she said, and it's about the awkwardness and embracing that awkwardness sort of stuff. She said, "The good thing about social media is that you can follow most advocates without having to be, in choose quotations, friends. I would suggest following for a while to get an understanding about that person's vibe, and that will help with the awkwardness," which is essentially what you had said. And then we have a hi from Emily Thompson. She said hi to both of us. I hadn't seen all the questions, so I'm just popping in.
I need to meet her. You know, she lives like a couple of hours away. So after all the social stuff goes away, I'm going to go meet her.
I think that would be a really good idea.
And
then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying hi to Felissa.
And Ariel Lawrence, I think this is a question for me. She said, "Kerri, would you be willing to speak on your experience of stepping outside the box and how, as an ally, you've managed to prioritize that in both your professional and personal life?" She said that sometimes I often feel that the onus for diversifying certain spaces is placed on people of color. What led you to become more comfortable assuming some of this burden? Well, I was not prepared to get a question. So, you know, when you're mentioning professional and personal life, when it comes to embracing the diversity of the DOC, it stands in direct alignment with embracing the diversity of the human experience for me. And so, like being friends with Cherise, being friends with you, Cherise, is not because you are a person of color and because I'm trying to diversify. It's because I like you. And so, independent of what either of us look like or demographically or whatever, it just the vibe is right and it works out good. But knowing how underrepresented people of color are and how well represented, especially white women with type 1 diabetes are in the community, I felt like I was doing a disservice by talking out of one side saying, oh, we need more voices and everyone's story matters, and then not using the other side to entirely highlight every person that I come across that after, you know, Cherise, you had mentioned going through and feeling that they are a credible resource, sharing their stories. It just seems like the right thing to do. And I feel like I've been in a position of incredible privilege to have the chance to tell my story. And I know that when I was coming up, I felt really lonely with type 1 diabetes and I felt like I was the only one. And so connecting with my peers meant so much to me that to not give a spotlight on someone else, to give them that same opportunity for peer connection is just the wrong thing to do. So it just feels right and is right, I think. I hope that's a pretty solid answer. I wasn't prepared for a question, so sorry. It's a little tangled.
Well, that was a good response because I think you just actually hit something.
Hmm.
Is that we're not friends because we have diabetes. We met because of diabetes, but our
Hmm.
friendship goes way beyond diabetes. So, and that's the same thing with Felissa and, Ariel and, everybody else that I meet. I find and I look for the best in everybody,
Hmm.
but if that vibe isn't there, I can't force it.
No.
So I can't be friends with everybody. I don't care what color you are, where you live. It's
Hmm.
just if I can't have a conversation with you and we can't sit in a room and not talk about diabetes,
Hmm.
that to me, there has to be something else.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
thought there.
And that we keep coming back to that it's got to be people connecting with people, regardless of how they look or all the rest of it. I mean, we're trying to amplify all kinds of voices, but like people just have to be nice and courteous and generous with one another, and that cuts across all spectrums, I think.
Yeah, but then if you think about it though, it goes back to that awkwardness, right? Because there's a lot of people that I know that didn't or weren't friends with Black people until they met me.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, how do you, if you want to grow your network outside of just your race, whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, whatever, how do you do it in the way? Because if you're sitting in Scott's small town where he's from with 600 people and there's nothing but white people, right? How do you step outside of that box of that small town to say, hey, I've never had a Black friend before. And
Hmm.
that's where this is going to be very awkward,
Bring it.
but I've never had a Black friend before, or I've never had a white friend before, or I've never associated with white people in this way, or the only people with type 1 diabetes that I know is white, and the only people I know with type 1 diabetes is Black. But we want to kind of get along in this space, and we need each other to really provide the voice of the community. So when there are people looking for people of color, how do we do it? How do we
Hmm.
do it in a way that is intentional? How do we say, you know what, Dexcom? I've been in a couple of your ads before. I'm a white woman. Let me refer you to, a person of color who would be a great fit for what you're looking for.
Hmm.
How do you and how do I, even if it's the shoes on the other foot, how do you say, okay, if this isn't specifically for Black people or specifically for white people, how do you say, wait a minute, I can't do it?
Hmm.
I need to bring more people in. I think that's the question. The question for me is, at what point do you say, okay, I've been in this space long enough, it's time to give someone else a chance, but how do you say, let that person be a person of color? Because I notice you don't have any people of color in your ads, or I notice you don't have any people of color on your board.
Hmm.
Like, how do we make that happen? So I think for me, as we're sitting here and we having these questions, and Ariel's question kind of made me think about it,
Hmm.
is how do you truly embrace the awkwardness of really recognizing, one, that you may not have ever been around a Black person or
Hmm.
white person, or socialize in a way where you feel comfortable, but we have to,
Hmm.
because it's diabetes. We have to share and amplify everybody's voice, because if we don't do it, we're doing a disservice to the community as it is now, and to a disservice to those younger people coming up.
Hmm.
Those younger people are going to want to see Native Americans. They're going to want to see Black Americans. They want to see African Americans. They want to see Asians. They want to see Latino. They want to see it all. We
Hmm.
can't keep thinking that this community is white, because it's not. My mom asked me, do you have any white friends with diabetes? Because every time I see a picture of you on Facebook, it's just white people. And I'm like, no, there's Black people with diabetes. So when I attended Diabetics on the Margin with Ariel, I text my mom the picture, and I was like, see, there are Black people in the community.
What did
So
she say?
she was like, I know you have Black friends, but I just don't see them in diabetes. So if my mom,
Mhm.
as I was diagnosed as an adult, if my mom sees it, who else is seeing it that's not participating?
And I think it also goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of thinking about influencers in a different way, that if you are a person who has any influence or any way of reaching a large number of people, use your power for good and shine a spotlight on a more diverse group.
Yep.
Don't just keep it all in one silo. We do have a couple other questions. Are you cool if I pop back over to those?
Yeah.
This one's from Kerri. Hi, Kerri. She asked, what is something that makes a person of color's diabetes experience different that you wish people understood?
Ooh. I would say, so this is not my personal experience, but we're going to take COVID-19, right? Because that's something that's out right now. And you see how the lack of health care in communities of color,
Mhm.
the lack of services in general, the lack of food, where, I see people on Instagram making some fantastic food. However, there's communities of color who don't have access to that just because of where they live, what zip code they live in.
Mhm.
The trust issue. I mean, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Tuskegee Airmen, and where the government they people they on purpose they gave people of color syphilis. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Henrietta Lacks story, where they took her cells and pretty much when she died, used them without permission from the family. So I think that long history of how Black Americans have been treated for so long, why older Black Americans and Hispanics, they don't go to the doctor because of how they've been treated in the past. It's the trust, the lack of access. They don't have a lot of the same health care that most people, white people, do. So that right there in itself, that's not an experience that I can speak to, because I was diagnosed as an adult and my husband was in the military for 24 years. But growing up and with my mom working in a health center, where I've ate sugar sandwiches, so that lets you know how much money we did not have, and I did not have diabetes back then. So I just think that the opportunities are so totally different. We automatically get a hand down, and white people get a hand up because of the color of our skin.
That's a big answer. So thank you for sharing that. And I apologize, I'm reading through the questions and trying to read very quickly. This one's not a question. This is from Pamela. She just wanted to thank you for amplifying your voice to help all persons of color with diabetes. And so it's just a big thank you to you for doing this.
Thank you, Pamela.
And we've got another one from Daniel in the UK. He's written, I'm a Black man based in the UK, and it's great that this conversation is happening, so thank you. Cherise, I know you mentioned that there have been changes, but do you feel that the same people of color pieces of people of color faces are used because they are a safe option, as in they know what the person is going to say, etc.? Also, I think that a voice which is really underrepresented is the voice of the Black men, people of color with diabetes in the community. I'm sorry, I couldn't see the full copy of the question as I was reading it, so I was trying to scroll and read at the same time. But did you get the question there? Okay.
Yes. So Daniel, hi, thank you so much for submitting. So it's funny that you actually asked that question, being in the UK, because I have asked at certain tables where there's more of a global presence, were there any Black people, any people of color with diabetes? Because I keep seeing the same white people from Europe as well. So you are right. One, the Black men, men of color, totally underrepresented. And if there's something that I can do to help amplify that voice, we need to make it happen. Second, your first question, yes, I do believe, and it's funny because Kerri and I actually had this conversation when we were going through our drive run. I do believe that people use the same people of color because they know them. However, it is up to that person of color to say, you know what, I've been here a couple of times. Let me give you Felicia's number, or let me introduce you to Kylene, or you know what, if you're going to have a booth for people, for the diabetes community, let's bring Ariel on board. Let's bring her platform on board. It's up to, if you are in the space to be a token and to be an influencer, you don't need to be in the space. And I'm going to get real. You don't need to be in the space. If you are here to get rich, bro, it ain't going to happen. However, if you are here to genuinely help people with diabetes, if you've been somewhere more than once, it's time to pass the torch on to somebody else. I don't care if you're white, black, whatever. It's time to pass the torch. Give it up, move on, and let somebody else come in and share their story. Because it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about the community. The more stories that cycle through, the more that these companies are able to make products for the diabetes community. The more people are able to get more people of color and people into clinical trials. It can't be about you. It has to be about the community. And I would tell you, I've been around this community for a very long time. Those people who was in it for the wrong reasons, they are no longer here. So please, 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 if you've been somewhere more than once, whether you're an influencer, an advocate, give up your seat. Give up your seat.
And I'll say you and I have been involved in the community for ish around the same amount of time. And I have seen people who started for one reason, maybe not what I would view the most altruistic reason, and have grown into their, like planted their roots as a true advocate and a true partner and a true champion for the community. So there is the ability for growth and for change for people. And I think the more that we can sort of encourage conversations towards feeding the greater good, towards using social media for social good, the more that we can do that as a whole, regardless of race, right, we're gonna improve our community by leaps and bounds. And so I'm glad that you had said that. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's not about individual people, but when our tide rises as a community, all the boats go up, and that's really, really powerful. Just adding another comment, question from Emily Thompson. She had asked, what about including people with multiple disabilities in the diabetes online community and in marketing? Disabilities cut across socioeconomic and gender areas.
Yes. So Emily, you are so right. So it's funny because when we had kind of talked about this, there it goes with, you know, disabilities, age. I mean, you don't see a lot of older people with diabetes. So Emily, yes, I want to be an advocate for people with diabetes who are underrepresented, and people with diabetes, disabilities, one of those groups. How can we get with the marketing team over at Dexcom? If Target can do it, why can't Dexcom, or why can't Medtronic and all these other companies? So Emily, I'm with you, girl.
And so, and then now we're practicing everything that we're preaching. So we need to be including voices of all different kinds, not just specific to race.
Right, correct.
So I'm with you too. whatever I or we can do to help. And so I'm looking through the question list. At the moment, we don't have any other questions. If people are listening, we have 10 more minutes left before we're going to be closing off the live portion of the chat. And we'll be archiving all of this for people to view afterwards. But now is a good, oh wait, we just had one pop in. It was like I summoned it.
Is it okay if I drink the water?
Can you do what, please? Oh yeah, no, are you kidding? So Kerri popped in again to ask, what are some things that we can do to support people of color in person and in offline beyond social media? And I know this is going to resonate for you, Cherise, because you've been talking about this for years.
So I think for me, one of the things that we assume is that everybody with diabetes wants to be online. And it's funny because it didn't dawn on me until maybe about a year or two into the community in DSMA, and being around so many global advocates and different organizations. And one day I was sitting and I'm like, wait a minute. If I was taught not to share my business online. And this is just my family, and I don't know if anybody else can attest to this or not. But my family, Black family, they're like, you're not a victim. You don't share your business online. You don't tell people, you're struggling and you don't have money. So if you think about that generation of people, why do we think that people have to come to us online? Why can't we go to them in their communities and help them build support groups? Or I want to let's back up. Let's back up. Get to know the needs of that community and figure out how you can help out. And then when the time is right, peer support will happen in the same way that it did online. So I think we need to get outside of ourselves and stop thinking about the online community, because everybody doesn't want to be online. People don't want to spend all day online talking about diabetes. And that's probably the majority of people with diabetes. And we have to be okay with that.
They don't want to spend all day online talking about diabetes. What are we doing with our lives then? I'm just kidding. But you had talked about reaching out to people who are not necessarily encouraged to be online or aren't comfortable being online. And so one thing that we had talked about, and this might be a good thing to sort of round out the conversation on, is that how do we help everyone in the community, whether they're comfortable sharing their stories or want to sort of lurk, and lurk like in a good way, not in a creepy outside someone's window sort of way. But how do we encourage people to see themselves in the community? How do we make the community more representative for everybody? So if I'm a lurker, I would want to see my story shown, even if I don't want to share my own. So how do we like boost that signal?
And that goes back to people sharing stories. If, like me, I'm probably just special in that way. I'm a people person and I love people. So I do watch accounts before I get going. I kind of do like my own social background check. But the first thing that I do is make sure I share. I'm a connector naturally. So for me, it's very easy to share. Look, share. Everybody sitting at home, say it with me. Share the voice of everybody, whether it's John, who has 1 follower, or Susan, who has 1 million. Share. Whether it's me, who is Black, or Maria, who's Hispanic. Share the stories. In order for the community to be diverse, disabilities, color, whatever, you can't just keep sharing your friend's stuff. You can't. You got to share everybody's stuff, y'all. You got to share everybody's stuff. If it resonates with you, share it. If you feel it and you want your friends to feel it, like you feel those Nikes, or like you feel that purse, or like you feel that coloring book, or like you feel that old BuzzFeed article about that recipe, and you share it so quickly, share, amplify. It's too easy. It takes 2 seconds to share.
I love that. I also love that you noted an old BuzzFeed article instead of like a new one. This seems pretty real.
I haven't seen them on Facebook lately.
What's that?
I haven't seen them on Facebook lately.
A BuzzFeed?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe we need to share more. I think they get enough shares, actually. They do get a whole lot of shares.
Yeah, they don't need us.
No. But
we need to share some of our stuff.
But that's, and I love that. And as a person who is not of color, like sometimes I feel it gets a little awkward. Like I don't want to seem disingenuous or like I'm not sharing enough. So I feel like embracing the awkwardness, accepting the fact that I will make missteps as I try to do this, but it's all in pursuit of trying to do the right thing. And I think it's okay to lean in a little bit and make a couple mistakes in pursuit of the greater good. What?
You just gave me an idea.
What was it?
If anybody wants to participate in the Women of Color Challenge, I can create something. So I have one that says I am participating in the Women of Color Challenge, and I can put I am an ally and I'm participating in the Women of Color Challenge.
Oh, so that's making me feel teary. So that would be really awesome, because then that would peel back some of those awkward onion moments.
Because for me, right, I could see from someone looking from the outside in saying, dang, I really want to share this, but I'm not a person of color, so, or a woman of color, but I really want to share it. But I'm going to practice what I preach, and I want to make our allies feel comfortable. So I will go in and I'll create a little template, and it says on top, I am an ally and I'm supporting or I'm participating, because the more people that share it, the better it is for women of color to have our voice out there, and for people to look at that hashtag. And it's so many diverse stories. I mean, like, there's this young lady from Africa that shared her story, her introduction today, and I just met her today. It's very exciting, but I like meeting people too, so that made me, cool. I don't know, but I'll do that for y'all.
I think that would be awesome. You're just, I mean, again, I keep forgetting that this is being live broadcasted and we're talking to a bunch of people. But like, what's that?
Everybody, I'm just cool. I just like to talk to people. So I don't know a stranger. So.
Well, I'm just so glad that, like, so this is a topic that we've been talking about kind of privately a little more. And so I'm really appreciative of the fact that you signed on to this. And at the beginning of it, you said you were low, and that made me nervous, but you also said that you felt a little nervous. And then as this went on, I watched any perception of nervousness just like go, because your soapbox is beautiful. And the way that you stand on it so like unabashedly sure of yourself, I'm so here for it. And so I'm glad that you took some time out of your day to come talk about this important topic with this community. I think it's really, really important. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think for me, why I was nervous, and we've seen it just in diabetes in general, where people talk and they seem like they're speaking for the entire community. And I am not speaking for I'm not speaking for everybody who has color. Like, this is my experience. And this is some of the ways that people have reached out to me that has worked. So you may not come across someone who may be as nice and friendly as I am, but as long as you take that risk and break that awkwardness, you'll never know. You could be missing out on one of your best friends and you just don't know it yet. Or you just have to do it. And for me, that probably was where the nerves was coming in, because I didn't want any person of color to think that I'm representing the whole entire diabetes community of color, because I'm not. It's just what I've seen and what I've witnessed over the course of the past 10 years.
And that resonates a lot for me too, because sometimes at different meetings or different things that I've spoken at, I want to make sure it's clear I'm not the Lorax of diabetes. I don't represent everybody. That's a personal perspective, but hearing other people's personal perspectives makes people either more comfortable in sharing their own, or at least they see themselves in that perspective. And what you've done today, I hope, has opened up a window to your perspective and made people feel more comfortable. And I'm just honored I'm trying not to curse. I'm very honored. Honored as gee whiz to have you on today. So.
I have one more thing to say. Also, people of color, find each other, follow them, and amplify as well. We got to amplify each other as well. So let's grow and get our Caucasian allies, but as a community, let's continue to lift each other up as well. That's equally as important, because if we're not supporting each other, no one else will support us. So we got to make sure we're supporting each other as well.
That's awesome, Cherise. Thank you so much. We're just about at a close. Is there anything you want to, I mean, you've dropped some major pearls, but is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Yes, I would say that if you have never, ever, ever, ever participated or attended a Friends for Life conference, register to attend the virtual event, because even though you're not going to be able to physically see everybody like you would at the conference, it would really give you a good idea. Because my hope is next year, I'll see more Black and brown people, more people of color walking the halls of CWD. So that's my ask. Step out your box, y'all. Let's do it. It takes a community. It takes a village. We got this.
Thank you and the short URL is CWD is FFL. So if you go to that, you'll end up at the registration page for the virtual conference, which is taking place in July from the 14th through the 19th, and it's free. So, I mean, we're going to be hanging out in this like isolation mode for a little while longer, so at least we'll have some really cool things to do while we're while we're stuck at home. So Cherise, thanks for the shout out. Thank you for being so generous with your time. You know, I appreciate it more than I can properly convey. And just for all of you at home that have attended and hung out with us today, I know the weather's really nice today, so thanks for coming inside and watching this webinar. I appreciate you being here. We're good. We're out. Thank you.